I need to get better at that.
Yeah. So cool. The main thing was that we have so many Docker images and so many tasks, and I think a large number of our pipeline time is spent just like downloading Docker images, rebuilding Docker images, things like that. And they're huge now, like 600 megs an image. It feels like we should be able to, at the minimum, simplify the process and hopefully reduce the size of individual images. Even if we have more images, I think if they're smaller, that would be ideal.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we have one Dockerfile.master in the root of the GitLab Docs project, and then we have 7 other images, which does seem like a lot. So, you know, I think the recent change that we made to version, like better version, the linting image was a good one, was a good thing to do. And now we've got 4 levers to pull, potentially independently, without having to have like a dependency problem where you've got to update something earlier to then get something later to happen. And so I wonder if that might be something we would look at as well. Like, you know, my agenda item there is just do a stock take, just describe what each one does. Could some of them be collapsed in together? You know, so could we have fewer of them and just have them be flat? So everything's done in the image or in the Docker file, sorry, rather than having Docker files depending on other Docker files. And then having a flat and simple list of Docker files that need to be separate, then have them be, you know, versionable and all that kind of stuff. Seems like a reasonable thing, yeah.
Like one of the things to me that seems like low-hanging fruit would be to remove nanoc from the lint image and lint and run like tests and nanoc tests separately.
I agree.
We could probably have like two, like 100 meg Docker image and a 200 meg Docker image type thing, rather than, it seems strange that it's 600 megs, like something, I feel like we've done something wrong and we've got some extra stuff in there somehow.
Yeah, it might be something where we might need to just sort of build it progressively and see where the weight comes from.
Or run it and log in and just do like a file dump and see where the files are located.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having smaller images is good. I think having more targeted images is good. So like you say, we could not build nanoc where we don't need it. We only need it to do lint. Like in the case of linting, we only need it for link checking.
And
we don't need it for anchor checking. We don't need it for markdown linting or veil linting or anything like that. So yeah, we shouldn't. I guess at the moment we are doing one pull and then we're running everything sequentially. So you sort of, we're not feeling the effects of a 600 meg image for every process. But if we just restructured things a little bit, like if we did the markdown linting first and then a later link checker depended on that earlier markdown linting, then we could avoid potentially for some pipelines building the NOC altogether or building the doc site altogether.
Or we could run them in parallel and have it finish faster.
We could, yeah, whether parallelism is more important or whether failing as fast as physically possible.
But that, to me, that's also failing faster, because if you have just an anchor broken, you have to wait for markdown lint veil to run before you can get to that failure.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, no, that's fair. I think an extension to this is the idea that we could perhaps cache the docs build, but that's a much more advanced topic. You know, the idea that we could
really
do
feels
these
like it
partial
should be
builds.
possible. It really feels like it should be possible. I don't know why it doesn't work for me. Like I've tested it by just copying a pre-built site and then trying to run Nanook, and it just rebuilds everything every time.
The heuristic for outdatedness is documented, and we've discussed that. I've not yet tried it myself, like that. But if we could avoid that build step, that would be good. It's really only a problem for the GitLab project. The other projects are sufficiently small that it doesn't really take a long time. And maybe that's telling us something too. You know, like with the handbook, they ended up splitting sorry, not the handbook, the website. They split it into subsites. You know, like marketing is one subsite, and you know, maybe it is something as a more advanced discussion for another time, and probably, you know, with our information architecture discussions coming into it, we need to split our doc suite further down. So for example, I think one very logical split would be the development docs get pulled out, and not in a different repo, but in a different directory structure. Not even if it's not even in a different directory structure, built separately somehow, checked differently. The admin area, if that administrator directory was clean, like it was just stuff for admins, for self-managed, then you could have that as like even another. So when you're building it, you could build it in separate pieces and just build the pieces that you want, but it all publishes together still potentially. That's how they've done it with the website, the marketing website, where you've got like handbook is a subsite that gets built separately. Marketing, I think, is a separate subsite. And then moving toward these, they call it like mono repo, I think, where you've got like a monolithic repo, but it's got lots of sub projects in it. So
within the same,
something for us to think about. And then having all of our stuff, you know, so like with the recent left hook stuff that we've just put in, you know, that's only running on changed files. Somehow we need to get to that point everywhere. I don't quite know how, but you know, the idea that
thankfully we're now testing on changed files only for Markdown lint and Veil, which is nice.
Yep, it is nice. Yeah, the link chat. Yeah. We're plucking off the low-hanging fruit, and now we're getting to the hard stuff where, you know, I see in other projects, for example, they're using the hashing certain files in the project to know whether a new image of that project needs to be rebuilt, and just stuff like that. You know, getting sort of clever where somehow we could tell certain conditions in a pipeline. Do we need to rebuild this image, or can we just pull down a cached one? Stuff like that. But yeah, I think I would definitely want Axel here for all of his kind of like uplift.
Yeah.
In that space.
It feels like, you know, like just on the development docs, it feels like we could conceivably just make that handbook, but not in the handbook, but like the engineer's development handbook could be a directory that they handle themselves, and like if they want us to check, we can check, but they can do their own thing, and that might reduce like a lot of the workload for the technical writing team.
That is kind of a there is something to that.
But like, I feel like we'd have to take it off the doc site or somehow quarantine it in a sense to say this is the engineer's handbook. You're welcome to read it, but it's its own thing. It's not product documentation. There's
a bit of a risk too that it'll end up like the troubleshooting docs where we were encouraged to pull in a whole bunch of stuff from support, but it's there, but the quality isn't necessarily, you know, to our standards of like everything's fully explained before you give a code sample and So, but yeah, I still think even from a technical perspective, we could build them somehow separately. If we were starting from
just thinking about it right now, when we do have those 4 sites, it would be interesting if we had a whole separate nav bar and everything that was, and it said like GitLab internal engineering documentation, and people would actually like that in a sense to say, oh, GitLab is publishing their internal engineering documentation. They're letting us look at it and they're letting us participate like engineers. having it look like product documentation is a little bit strange almost. It kind of doesn't suit the doc site because contributor.
Yeah. I mean, I think I often think that it should have its own nav, even if we do nothing else. Like we don't change anything about it except that it doesn't live on that product nav.
Yeah.
That would suit me, and that would be relatively easy, I think, to do. We would just need, at the moment, the logic is around like what directory is this documentation in to know what nav is available. We would just need to, like, I guess, refine that. So anything under GitLab, but also GitLab development would all of a sudden potentially have its own nav. And then, you know, all the cross-linking still works, of course, you'd just be presented with something different. As for like whether we would stop owning stuff like that, I would definitely want to bring in, you know, tech writing leadership on that, but it wouldn't bother me to do that. It wouldn't, personally, I get the odd MR for dev docs, and I like to be consulted about, like, when particularly with the GraphQL stuff is a good example where I like to have been consulted with the approach, but they probably don't need to run every single like update to their documentation of that approach past me. But then on the other hand, it does keep the quality quite high. I don't know how I feel. Like, I guess you know, gold standard, we have a bigger team and we can absorb we can absorb the work, but we don't have a bigger team. So maybe we should just, say, you know what, we're going to publish it on a different nav, so the nav is less overwhelming. And maybe we do agree as a team. I think it have to be a team decision, particularly a leadership decision, to say, you know what, you don't need to put things through us unless you really want to. It's not like a hard. I think that'd be all right. I mean, and I guess really what we're talking about though, this is a side note, because what I'm thinking of, and the reason why I brought up the idea of breaking down the docs in the GitLab project, was the idea of building quicker and checking fewer. But
yeah,
I don't quite know what that looks like yet. Other than maybe Chad Woodley could, and Leanne, I think her name would be. Leanne is like a full stack. Actually, she's a full stack engineer. Sorry, for people ops. But yeah, Chad Woodley, he's static site engineer. He's been doing a lot of the engineering for the website. But then, so Leanne has two, really. Like, she's been doing people ops engineering, but it's all in that. It's in a few different projects, but you know, she's the one that moved the comp calculator out.
Oh yeah.
You know, so they might actually be able to consult on how you might mono repo. But yeah, something to maybe discuss with the team as well.
It probably wouldn't be that hard. Like, we could just pull the project, have development docs where they are, and just on deploy move them into another directory. Because I mean, right now it's just saved within the Docker image as /ee/runner/omnibus. We could have a /development and just copy stuff into there on deploy. It wouldn't be hard. I don't think it would be hard. And we would just
I don't think it'd be
nav code.
We could
just
definitely
need people to approve it, basically. And it might not even be a good idea, but it's definitely worth exploring, I'd say.
We could definitely figure something out. I'm always thinking that perhaps there's a better way than one we could conceive of. So I would just be interested in just finding out from a full stack engineer. Like, they might just say, oh, it's really, everything you've just said is exactly what you do. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. But it's one of those things.
We've also had some difficulty in finding DRIs for the various development docs. Like, they a month or two ago, they added like all these new architecture pages within just /architecture. They didn't put them in development docs because they're like, well, it's not about development, but it is internal, like architecture plans and stuff like that, which is really not product documentation, but they couldn't find another place for it. It might be a good place for that.
Yeah, maybe we just need to give them more freedom. Yeah, I'm always up for that. I think Susan's pretty friendly with that idea as well. The idea that biggest bang for buck.
Yeah, it's such a pain to try to get to the handbook through the code, because every now and then I've been trying to help out with a little bit of link cleanup, because Vasily, is it Vasily? Vitali? Sorry. There's a manager and the engineer, and I always get them confused. Made a link checker on the handbook site, and he can't turn it on 100%. So he's put in some filters such that, like, if the link is in this section of the handbook, don't just ignore the error. And I've been trying to help out since he's helped us out as well. But it's like, click, okay, master, sites, handbook, source, handbook, sites, source, handbook.
Yes.
It's so
I get it.
nested.
Yeah. I know, I get
and
it.
because it all got moved in one, cut and paste, the history is gone.
Oh yeah, yep.
Because the file only suddenly existed like 4 or 5 months ago, and if you try to dig back into the history, it's like, ooh, this file didn't exist that long ago.
Yeah, so, it's like when we did the CE to EE synchronization. Yeah. Like, there was so much more history in the the CE. But yeah, it's one of those things that it may work for us, it may not. I always try and think back to how would we do it if we were doing it today, and I think we would definitely keep docs with the project for that project. So like Gitly, we would have tried to have figured out a technical solution to not having to have everything live in the GitLab project for it to be viewable to customers and stuff. But apart from that, I think things like, just the way that the docs directory has grown and is now a really large piece. Did someone say it was? Like, someone did an analysis of how many pages it is. It's too many pages. Like, maybe.
Yeah, Mike said it was too War and Peace.
Like with the,
I'm not sure.
Dev docs, what would we think about just moving the dev docs out of the GitLab project? Like, why do they live in there? Yeah, you kind of said that before. Like, why don't
maybe do their own thing?
Yeah, like, why it actually could be its own repo, because that'd be more controversial. But like, we have got a few other bits and pieces, like, the releases project, and that's where someone that, Marin documented the auto deploy bot stuff. It was like in this releases project. You've seen that, and there's a few other places, and there is still documentation in the Gitly project. It's ostensibly just for Gitly developers. And if I was concentrating fully on Gitly, I would try and solve the problem of what have we got, where have we got it, where should we have it.
Runner has started doing that for different custom executors, and they're making a sub project for each one and documenting it in that project each time.
Yeah, good. I think that's the way of the future, and we just need to figure out our publishing process such that we can pull in all of these projects and drop them in the directory structure that we want. I mean, you're still going to end up then with a fat. See, maybe that's, if we were rethinking it, and maybe
that's kind of the point of the meeting.
Yeah, like if we were, I'm not sure if we were, I guess build process, this comes under build process. Like, if we actually broke down the documentation into different repos, but then you sort of all brought it together just at the end. Like, like we've got the advantage that the runner docs are in runner. The runner docs are in runner, so they're quite quick to fix and build and stuff like that. Omnibus is the same, charts is the same. If the GitLab Docs directory was actually like 5 different projects, hypothetically, I'm not sure what the split would be. If that was 5 separate projects, then each one of those would be built separately in MRs and all the rest of it. You would just have this one, like the scheduled pipeline, this one glorious 4-hourly or 8-hourly process that pulls them all together for that final step. So maybe there's something in that.
That's what we do now.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, we should do that.
But why would we need different projects?
Because we don't want to have to build 1,000 or 1,500 markdown files all the time for the GitLab project.
But then we'd have 5 pipelines rebuilding you know, a portion of those 1,500 pages, and it would add up to 1,500 pages in the end, wouldn't it?
In the end, but not. It would speed up merge request pipelines.
Yeah.
And which is where I'm coming at it from. I don't mind how long it takes the.
Well, actually, merge request pipelines, I think, are only building the runner docs for things like review apps and things. So if you're in runner, I think it's only building runner.
100%. Yeah, that's right. So I'm thinking of pushing, like, so I'm looking at it from the perspective of doing that, having the benefit of a lighter doc suite, but taking that to the GitLab project and splitting documentation. Like we want docs to be done with the code, but for docs that aren't ever done with code, you know what I mean? Like that could be pulled out. Like you could literally have the GitLab Dev Docs project.
Well, yeah, imagine that would be a great place for the GDK docs.
Potentially, but then at the same time, GDK has its own project. And so
I'm saying it doesn't necessarily have to be connected to the projects anymore, because in one, just one quick command, we can pull the docs, and then in the next command, we can just say move to wherever we want within the tree of the doc site.
The biggest problem we have right now is that engineers, we have to keep the situation where an engineer who's doing code that affects docs can do all that in one MR. So and you're right, often with GDK, we're rarely changing functionality in a docs facing way, where a lot of it is how-tos, like how to do stuff in GDK. And that doesn't change GDK. I mean, that stuff could technically, like if you're getting a docs only MR in GDK, it probably wouldn't matter where it lived. Like it wouldn't matter if it lived in the GDK or if it lived somewhere else. And like with all the architecture documentation, you're rarely going to change something in the code that then has a documentation change. So any time that a document never accompanies a code change, that would be a candidate to move out of the GitLab project. And then the GitLab project is just the docs for GitLab. How GitLab all hangs together with other stuff, other tooling, you could potentially, but yeah.
Just writing out the thought, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, anyway, I would definitely like Axel's thoughts on how he would approach faster builds.
I had another point. So just before I forget so do we need to do everything we do in compile dev for review apps? So this was something else that I mentioned before about, like, we're doing minify, which seems to run pretty quick. And we're also creating gzip files. I think definitely we should cut out the gzip files, but what it means is we'll have to have like compile review app. Like we'd have to have a new pipeline job dedicated to building review apps, but it would be pared down.
Well, compile dev isn't compile dev only for review apps? And then compile prod, there's another compile job for production.
I think it's also being used on the doc site. Like, sorry, the docs project. So like you want to do a full build on the docs project and get a docs project review app to make sure that everything I think is working is still a good idea before pushing to production.
I don't know, but I would be happy to do less.
It would speed it up a little bit, shrink the size a little bit.
I think as long as, because we know we're tearing down our review apps. So that was a problem before, where we were just keeping these environments open forever and we're running out of disk space. But I think, yeah, if we're don't really have that problem anymore, I'm happy to do less on them. It's rare that I'm like, like chomping at the bit to get into my review app, but I did like that change that we made where we made it available to build immediately, because sometimes that'll allow me to, while I'm like crafting a comment and I'm wanting to have a link, by the time I finish crafting the comment, I've actually got a link available to me, instead of like crafting a comment where I want to link to the review app and I'm like, oh, I have to come back to this because I can't build the review app yet. So that was a really great change, and that I've already used that. I've already used that build immediately thing. So yeah, if you think that there's value in that, I am ambivalent in terms of like, yeah, it doesn't bother me either way.
It's going to take brain cycles to do all of this that we don't necessarily have, but it's definitely something to let percolate in the back of the mind. I
think we could be more efficient though. I think efficiency, less fat and less time spent. I think, like, so for example, I'm very close to asking, like, a backend engineer person that I know to pair with me to just show me how to get all the debugging happening for Ruby code so that I could unify our internal link checks. I hate that we're effectively running them twice, but one's taking notice of the anchor and one's not. And I actually almost asked you, because I don't do a lot on GitHub, like with my GitHub profile. So I was almost going to say to you, did you want to propose it as a feature suggestion? Like, while you're there, Nanok, can't you just check that the anchor is valid? I don't know if that's something you wanted to do.
I think part of the problem is that it's done. Those were two separate things. So Nanok has a link checker, but it was I can't pronounce his name.
I remember how
treasures. He built that himself. So we have one thing that's built by Nanok and one thing that's built by GitLab. Yeah. So that it would have to be done by us, I think.
Well, ideally Nanok or Nanok or whatever would support it. But failing that, yes, we would run only our own check and it would do both. Yeah. And I think that would save us quite a bit of time in the pipelines. I'm really getting quite enthusiastic about that. But what I need, for me to be able to do it, I need to be able to run, I need to be able to watch variables. I need to be able to step through code. Pry and all that stuff. And I've been shown it before and I need a refresher.
I sat and watched Camille about 2 weeks ago on what was it? That's when we were getting double pipelines on the main GitLab project, I noticed. And I was like, hey guys, we should fix this. And this was late at night and Camille was like, this is not good. We got to fix this. It's a major problem. It was a major problem, but it wasn't an S1, P1 because the pipelines were still working. It was just like causing all kinds of complaints and questions. And so he's like, let's get on a Zoom call and figure this out. And I hopped on and man, oh man, he was like, let's pry. And he's running right on the server. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, my phone is connected to my headphones as well.
Oh, gotcha.
And so when someone tried to ring me, it's like, screw whatever you're doing with Marcel.
Yeah.
I can't hear you anymore. It's gone mute. But I'll
anyways, it was like it was basically watching someone do voodoo. Like it was magical, the stuff that he could do by just connecting to Rails console itself and pry into the code. And he was building pipelines from the command line. Like it was ridiculous.
Yeah. So I don't think that fixing the checker to our needs is beyond us, but it's just going to take too long to have to try some code. You need a quick feedback loop, and that's what Camille was getting with Pry and all that. He was getting a quick feedback loop. And I think Ash helped me with a problem once on that project, and he actually put in the dependencies. We've got them all in there merged. Like they're in the development dependencies of the GitLab Docs project. Everything that's needed, I just need to be told or shown again, how do I set this up? And then, I could probably do it. It's pretty simple logic. I just need to see what the variables look like so that I can ask questions of them.
Yeah.
But I think that would be a benefit too. And that's something we can control inside the team. I'm just laboriously listing out these images because there's a lot of them.
We've got too many for sure. But I mean, there's advantages to having them split out, but to be honest, I'm not sure what Nginx on build does.
I don't know either. And we may keep them all. That's why we do a stock take.
Yeah. Single, let me look, doc base, doc lint. I think single is like a Docker image that contains the doc site itself, or like builds. We'll have to, take a lot less time just to have Axel explain each one to us, but
he could write a little note, a little description. Like I might even just Slack it. I'll just like at Axel. Can you write a description against these? I think did that do it?
Possibly.
Oh, it did, but usually you can get a task or something. At Axel. Oh yeah, here we go. Right.
Send message, send email. Hi. Are you sending an email?
Description. I'm opening a chat, and then I can assign it to Axel. Yeah, so I can do that. Can you see that now?
Yeah.
Now, is that linked to that? Oh, okay, yeah, that'll do. Hopefully you figured that out.
Yeah, I feel like, for example, like Bootstrap then goes into base, then goes into lint, for example.
I'm sure it all makes perfect sense.
No, I mean, it works, obviously. But the main thing is some of the things like archive, single, I think all of them just make use of Bootstrap because he feels like that, that has why rebuild the whole thing when you can do it's basically partial builds is what he's doing here.
I'm sure that's right.
And I'm wondering what is the advantage to that, because it does feel like it might simplify things if we didn't do partial builds, because we have to rebuild Bootstrap, then rebuild base, then rebuild lint and stuff like that when we're updating Ruby or updating versions and things, and I would like it to just be in one place.
And the image you get at the end is still the same. Like,
exactly.
All you've done is I think the only time you should do it is if you're reusing configuration. So that's what we do now with a lot of the GitLab CI, where you'll be like, certain things are true for every image. So we're going to put that in the base image, and then we only have to update it in one place. So that, if we were to refactor this again, not saying that we will, but if we were to refactor this again, if we wanted to be able to roll out Ruby 2.7.2 to every image all at once, then you could have like a base image that is just all the versions of things, and then everything feeds off that and picks it up automatically. But we'd have to rethink it. At the end of the day, you're not saving yourself anything in terms of the image size that I know of. And to me, it's harder to follow. Like the thing with the linting image now, because it's just flat, I know exactly what it's doing. Like I know exactly what it's doing, why it's doing it. I know it's not that hard to, like, if you see like a little from, I know it's not hard to like work your way back, but I like how we've got GitLab Docs. I like how we've got GitLab Docs lint now, and I don't know why we wouldn't do that for everything.
Well, GitLab Docs lint is built off of base.
Well, it was. It's not anymore.
I think it is.
You
sure?
That was one of the changes we made. Yeah. So some of the base stuff
from Ruby, from
some of this stuff at the start used to be done in base for this image, and I copied it out of base into this image so that all 4 levers were available to the one file.
There you go. Yeah, that's what I want to do.
yeah. So we got part
Sorry,
of the way
so
there.
I thought this was still coming off of Docs base.
Yeah. So then I think as a separate step, I had to update base.
Yeah, that was my confusion. Why you had 2 MRs to get things up to 2.7.2. That's why I was so confused with this.
Yeah, so base is also updated now, but that's for images that don't take it. For images that are still based off of it, it was necessary. But I wanted to divorce base and linting so that even in the linting image, you could pin the version of Ruby at that level rather than having to wonder, is this going to break? Is this going to have an unintended consequence? And that's why we've been able to, actually I haven't done it yet. I'll do it next time. You know how we don't like to overdo linting images. Like we can pull out of the linting image, we can now pull the bundler, the old bundler install step, but we can't do that for base because other projects are probably using images that base is based off of that are using the old bundler. I have no idea when we'll retire that, to be honest. But this is why we need simpler structures and more levers to pull.
And the main thing is the same thing as like base. We've put in things that may not necessarily be used in every image. Like, is curl used in every other Docker image like that needs to use it? Are we using curl in docs lint? Are we using, you know, tar, go, things like that? Like we might be able to really by shrinking, well, or by eliminating doc space, we'd be able to target our images a lot more, you know, laser focused,
100%,
and have a lot less of these extra things that we're pulling in.
Yeah. I'll probably have a hard finish now because I have no doubt that my wife was ringing to give me instructions before she got home, like dinner and stuff.
For sure.
So I better go. But yeah, good chat. And yeah, hopefully we'll hear back from Axel. We can start to discuss some of this a bit more with him. And you can if you want to let, you know, Susan and Craig know that we met. Here's our notes, and there's a video if you want it. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, we'll do.